Across the road from the setting for Nicola Sturgeon's announcement, someone was staging a bit of a distraction. The Queen misses a lot of engagements of late, but kept this one. Just as, in the building next door, the First Minister was declaring Scotland should have a second independence referendum next autumn.
I want the process set in train today to lead to a lawful constitutional referendum and for that to take place on the 19th of October 2023.
Knowing that constitutional matters are reserved to the UK Parliament, not the Scottish Parliament, and that people will be queuing up to refer her to the courts, Nicola Sturgeon decided to short-circuit the whole thing and refer herself, knowing that most constitutional experts think the Supreme Court will tell her she has no right to call such a vote.
If it does transpire that there is no lawful way for this Parliament to give the people of Scotland the choice of independence in a referendum, and if the UK Government continues to deny a Section 30 order, my party will fight the UK general election on this single question: should Scotland be an independent country?
Nicola Sturgeon was under huge pressure in the party and beyond, wasn't she, to have a referendum as soon as possible, to show that the flame still burnt. She's done that, she's proved it, without the inconvenience of having to have an early referendum.
Oh, I think this is, I take my hat off to her. This is a very, very good tactic. If the Supreme Court says no, then Nicola is off the hook with the activists. I tried to get the referendum, we've all been talking about.
She was under a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure, but that gets her off the hook.
We will have to vote yes. No.
Nicola Sturgeon knows polling suggests there isn't an appetite in Scotland to revisit all this as soon as next year.
I'm not going to take lectures from the man who undermined the entire economy.
We are going to the polls in just 2 days' time.
Isn't it the case that the pandemic Nicola that said she wanted to pull us through is gone, and the partisan Nicola Sturgeon that wants to divide our country is back, pursuing a referendum that 2/3 of Scots don't want right now?
One who helped the British government negotiate the last referendum thinks repeated refusals from London to grant a second one could fuel Nicola Sturgeon's cause.
The longer this goes on, where that principle of self-determination for Scotland is acknowledged, but the UK government says, nah, not now. Maybe come back in 18 years' time or 17 years' time when it's 25 years since 2014. Doesn't matter how you vote at the next general election, doesn't matter how you vote at the next Holyrood election, etc., etc. I think at some point we have to start rethinking and redefining the British Constitution, because that is not a union of consent.
Yeah. So we won't play Nicola Sturgeon's games. We won't take part in a pretend poll when there is real work to be done.
It's not a choice he's likely to face. Nicola Sturgeon is very clear. She doesn't want to hold a wildcat, illegal poll, and Supreme Court consent for a legal one would surprise just about everyone.
Then I can't see the Supreme Court agreeing to that.
So they're going to turn it down.
So they turn it down. She's did her best. Nobody can complain against that, and she's given the movement time to get up to a winning position.
And a bit of momentum.
Oh yes, I mean, people.
A feeling the flame still burns.
People will be energised today, let me tell you.
Over the road, the royal visitor is still in residence. Some Unionists today were daring to dream Nicola Sturgeon's tactics portend a referendum forever being kicked down the road. Some nationalists said their leader had put the party on track to boost support for the cause sooner than their opponents might think. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News, Edinburgh.
Well, with me now is the Scottish Government's Cabinet Secretary for the Constitutional, External Affairs and Culture, Angus Robertson. You're asking the Supreme Court to decide on this issue. They're saying tonight they can't confirm when the case will be heard. And this could be a long wait. October 23 might be pie in the sky for you.
I don't think it is, but it's not for me to second guess the Supreme Court. They'll make the decisions about when they might hear something, if they want to hear something, when they might hear it, and how they will judge on it. That's not up for us to second guess. I think what everybody can agree on, though, is that there has been a point of contention about the Scottish Parliament being able to legislate for a referendum, and what's absolutely crucial for us is that we have a legal, agreed and constitutional route forward to determine Scotland's future. It's important for people on both sides of the argument that we have an agreed process. Now, you might say to me, forgive me,
a referendum, this is about how far you can go as a Scottish Parliament, isn't it? What's reserved for Westminster and what you guys can do. And a referendum on independence is about the Union, isn't it?
Well, the first thing to say, of course, is that there's a shortcut in all of this if the UK government were to recognise last year's election result, where we have a record majority in the Scottish Parliament in favour of a referendum, is to do what happened before, which is to use what's called the Section 30 powers, which would allow the Scottish Parliament to legislate and for the referendum to go ahead. Now, unfortunately, the UK government is blocking democracy, is blocking that route, so we're trying to establish clarity, and this is the right way to go forward, so everybody knows it's above board, it's not a party political consideration or indeed a Scottish government consideration. It'll be clarified by the Supreme Court, and then we hope with a fair wind that we will be able to have the referendum as has now been set for the 19th of October 2023. It's what the Scottish government was elected to do.
Robertson, a referendum on independence would be about the Union, and the Scottish Parliament there doesn't have powers over the Union. So you would be asking the Supreme Court to conclude that a referendum on independence wasn't about the Union.
Well, you're inviting me to begin to make the case that will be made in court, and that's not for me to do. I would point out, though, gently, that of course referenda in the UK have always been consultative. They were consultative about devolution, they were consultative about Scottish independence in 2014, and they were consultative about Brexit. So whether it is appropriate for the Scottish Government, the Scottish Parliament to legislate for a consultative referendum is exactly the thing that we're seeking to get the legal clarity on. And the ball...
And if not, then you say you fight a general election on independence as a single issue. And what do you say to voters then who say, what are you thinking? I'm more concerned about the cost of living and the war in Ukraine.
Well, I would be making the point, well, firstly, the fact that people did care enough about it last year that they returned a majority of MSPs to this place to have a say in the future of the country. We'd rather that we didn't have to wait for the next Westminster election. As I've said already, the UK government could tomorrow say, we've listened closely to the arguments, we recognise that a pro-referendum majority exists in the Scottish Parliament. As Democrats, we'll disagree on the arguments of yes and no, but on the democratic standards we agree that there should be a referendum. We don't need to go that far down the road, but as Democrats, if that's all that remains open to us, that is what we will do. We'll fight an election and the people will have their say. It won't be for journalists or for politicians, it'll be for the people to make the decision, and it's quite right that the people of Scotland should determine the future of Scotland.
But it is an admission, isn't it, that you prioritise independence above an issue like the cost of living. You're saying it yourself.
No, it's about having the powers in this Parliament to deal with that as an issue and everything else. What we're supposed to be...
That's not what Nicola Sturgeon said today. She said it would be the single issue.
We're supposed to be... No, but on powers it's quite important. Are we to be silent bystanders while others make decisions, and largely bad decisions like Brexit, on our behalf, or are we going to empower this Parliament so we can make better decisions closer to home?
You mentioned
either
Brexit,
we live in a democracy or we don't, and either the UK is a voluntary union or it's not.
You mentioned Brexit. Nicola Sturgeon has begun to outline the case for independence. You presumably think that Brexit causes economic harm, removing itself from the UK's biggest trading partner, the EU. Independence would be Scotland removing itself from Scotland's biggest trading partner, the UK.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things about that. Firstly, I think Scotland rejoin the European single market and the European Union is the best thing that we could possibly do, point one. Point two, in asking about specific policy questions, that's exactly the kind of thing that we will going to be answering through the publication of the Prospectus for Independence that we are publishing this year in the run-up to the referendum. And I'm delighted that network television is here today and no doubt will be back to cover this as an issue, because we're not going away, and we're not going away because the majority of MSPs elected to this place in a democracy voted for this to happen, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
And we're delighted to be here, and we're glad to have you with us as well, Angus Robertson.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.